Going once. Going once, going twice. All right, we'll accept the agenda as presented and approved. Minutes of the April meeting were sent out. I'll take a motion to approve those minutes. Taylor.
Move to approve the minutes.
Yeah, right. Any discussion, comments, corrections, or clarifications needed on the minutes? Any objection to approving the minutes as submitted? Seeing none, minutes are approved. Thank you. Board appointments. We followed up with Atlas. Atlas, good to see you here today. Welcome. And confirmed their interest in being on the board. It was an obvious addition to the board given all of the work they've done over the last year with the organization. So I was super pleased that they'd be willing to take that open seat that we had. I've got ABC positions in there, so this is initially a 1-year seat because that's just the one that's open. So we're going to be having this 3-year rotation on there, but do that. So I'm super thrilled, Atlas, that you're able to do that. So if someone would like to throw out a motion to approve the appointment of Atlas to the founding board of directors for the open seat position, please.
Yeah, I'd like to motion to approve Atlas to the founding board.
Seconded.
Thank you, Taylor. Any other discussion, concerns, questions? Atlas, anything you want to say about?
No, I sent it in the email. I think I was just kind of reviewing last month's meeting minutes and then everything that's happened with the applications and stuff. And it's just, I just want to take a moment to recognize how far we've come. And it's been a crazy 1.5 years. And I don't know, I certainly at the beginning didn't see Ryan becoming a executive director, but here we are. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much. Any further discussion or questions? Any opposition or abstentions to approving Atlas for the open board position? Seeing none, that is approved. Congratulations. Thank you very much, Atlas. Reports. Let's see, chair's update. I really have only kind of one general comment to make. I'm still working on the corporate stuff with the state of Alaska that we approved last time. So that's just in process at this point. And working with Ryan on the contract with the Alaska Works and the Denali Commission. We're reasonably close, but we've got some problems in the proposed contract related to intellectual property and the schedules that they've got in there, but I think we'll get that worked out. So I'm not too worried about that at this point, but it's what I'm working on. But also just to
sorry, Kai, I apologize, I wasn't keeping up with you. What is the contract that you're running into some contract language problems on?
This is the Alaska Works Partnership contract with the Denali Commission. But other than that, just to reflect that, there's been 4 significant meetings in the last week. The Just Transitions conference over the weekend, a microgrid working group meeting is involved with the Arctic X on Monday, and the Sustainable Energy Conference. And my observation is that the work that we are doing is right in the heart of what I see as a really important transition the state is going through. I think the state is kind of unfreezing. If you were to go back 6 months ago, the view of so many people would be somewhere around the idea that success is keeping the pipeline 25% full. And I think things have changed dramatically in the last year. So I've got a lot of work to do to kind of clean up and collect my notes and make sense of it. But I'm really energized about what's happening. I'm super energized to see so many Alaskans that are thinking differently about the future. And I think the potential role we have in helping to encourage more of that and to help guide that is really valuable. So I'll just leave it at that. Otherwise, I'm just kind of brain numb and I'll just take up time without being able to say much new. So Brian, over to you.
Thank you, Kai. So it's been a fun month. It's been exciting to see some progress move forward with the Denali Commission and Alaska Works. That the conversation is ongoing there, but looking forward to that coming together. There has also been some works with, let's see, I'm trying to pull my notes back up. I was trying to find a document here. There's also been some good progress on a couple different grant applications that have gone out over the course of the past month. And so one of those is the Anchorage Municipality American Recovery Plan Act, the ARPA funding. And so that funding, the municipality opened up a call for submissions with the deadline closing last Friday. And so we put together a fast application for that thing, a big audacious application to purchase a building and create a community hub in the downtown area. And so that application, you can see the text submission for that document at the link that I just provided there. That application also allowed for 3 pages of attachments. And so you'll find the appended items that went along with that application. The municipality yesterday had a meeting to review submissions. And so that was a 6-hour slog where they put all of the submissions up on several big boards that had quadrants on them, and move stuff around to say, we think this one could and should move forward, has a high probability of success and should get funded, versus the bottom left-hand corner where they did not think that it should move forward. So the submission, I'm glad to say, did not get cut, and has some interest in following up for some additional questions. So we got a yellow dot. They went through and marked them out for which ones they had more questions, which ones they wanted to move forward, which ones they thought shouldn't, and which ones they had some support but maybe not as much. And so we got a yellow dot, and so there is some interest, some follow-up questions. And I'm glad to say we are not the highest dollar amount. There was another proposal that came in for about 20 million to provide some housing support. There was an additional proposal that was submitted by I believe it's the Compass Group, and they applied for approximately $15 million to create a hub site in the downtown or Fairview area as well. And so that tells me that our ask amount was pretty reasonable and right on track, and if ambitious. So I'm looking forward to seeing how things continue, and also excited to be able to answer some questions. Going through that application process, it was really clear to me how much prep work this group has put together, and how much thinking we have been doing as an organization for what we're doing and why we're doing it. And it was really helpful to be able to pull grant language together out of some of the other documents that we've worked on, and to really have a pretty clear idea of how what we're doing aligns and can make an impact in the state. So I'm excited for the toolkit that we have developed, and for the opportunities that seem to be coming up. There's 2 more grants that are in process at this point. There's the Build to Scale grant, which is an EDA grant. That grant is being led by the UAF Center ICE team, that submission that we're working on. And so we're exploring that with the potential of using the match from the Denali Commission funding to go towards that grant. And we're still seeking clarity on if it's allowable to use that funding. We believe that it is, but we want to cross our T's and dot our I's and make sure. But what we would be applying for under that grant would be an extension of the existing proposed work under the Denali Commission and Alaska Works, just trying to extend it, be able to have some more impact and outreach around that existing plan of work. The other funding opportunity that is going to be closing today, actually, there is something called I believe it's the Rodenberg Foundation, They will work with community impact projects and fund about $50,000 to support someone to focus in on the work. And so I'm crafting together a submission to cover some time and cover Alaska version 3 to be able to keep doing the work that we're doing. And so that's going to close today, but it seems like another natural fit for us. So I'm excited to see what happens and excited for the momentum that's starting to build.
Cool. Any questions for Ryan on any of that?
No question, but on the Denali Commission funding for build to scale, you can use it because we use it for ours. So talk to Shirley Kelly because we use Denali Commission money to match for our build to scale grant, which is the same program.
That's good to know. The catch we've got here is that we're getting the Denali Commission funding through Alaska Works, and we're trying to figure out if we have to have Alaska Works potentially
Yes,
in the middle of that. And if they have to be in the middle of it, then we're kind of hosed because that's been impossible to get them to do anything. But since it's a pass through them, maybe we can, maybe we can't. That's the detail we're trying to sort out.
Got it. Yeah, that's tricky.
Yeah, so I think so. Other questions or comments for Ryan on the work he's doing with these grants? Cool. Thank you, Ryan. It's all good stuff. And if I know there was a link in the agenda to the 4th Avenue proposal and that 3-pager. If you haven't looked at it, definitely do. It just was really impressive to see what Ryan pulled together on that proposal and the vision that it has, but it's just a cool document anyway. So the next item on our agenda is following up on the discussion we started last week on strategies and plans for the organization. That was the main focus we wanted to come back to this week with some additional time to dive into the organization's plans in a little more detail. I want to, I think, just reference that there's a link in the agenda to the PowerPoint from last week. I think with the group here, I'm not going to take any time to go back through that, but just to remind you that link and the material there that we touched on briefly last week included our mission statement that focuses in on our role as a community and economic development organization for facilitating collaboration and networks and catalyzing for action. And then it had some information about this dialogue approach that we're trying to build in terms of engaging people in developing narratives and action. And it had some information about some of the programs that we've had in the past. And it had a broad presentation of some of the programs that might continue into the future. So it's there if you want to refer to that. It's been kind of the starting point I've had for trying to pull together some new information for us to discuss at this point. And in terms of the format, the process now, Kitty or Ryan, do you want to kind of tee that up, or do you want me to, in terms of what we're going to do next?
Yeah, so Kitty has introduced the 3x3 concept as a way to identify target priorities for the organization as we look to move forward. A lot of times these are considered for 3-year periods, with the caveat that we would come back and reflect on these on an annual basis. And so Kai and I have proposed some potentials. We each created a draft, and then we've got hopefully a merge of the two concepts together to outline some potential opportunities or target areas that we think would be a good fit for Alaska version 3 over the year. And so we're going to lay those potential opportunities out for y'all, and then get some feedback on what we have laid out, what we think should be changed, and if there's anything that's missed there. I think, Taylor, you had a suggestion to then go through and really put some SMART goals to the things that have been outlined. I would imagine today we're probably going to get to a thumbs up, thumbs down. Do we generally approve the slate that we're heading in, make some refinements, and then potentially come back during next month's board meeting to get a little bit more granular with what that would look like. My hope would be that I could have some follow-up conversation with the rest of the board, individually or as a group, to really define these a little bit. OKRs.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm sharing this screen. This is the template that Kitty introduced us to, and I want to start off just because, you know, one of the lenses that I have in all of the work that I want to be doing with y'all in the community is always kind of coming at this from three levels, which is, you know, how can the work that we're doing here be useful for you personally? How can it be useful for you and the other organizations you work with? And how do we apply it and use it within AKV3? So I want to take a second and just talk about this template that we're using, because I think it's a valuable tool that you could use for yourself or with your organizations. And the basic approach that Kitty is introduced it to is this idea of the power of threes here. And the basic idea is really straightforward and simple, and that's the power of it. I think in part is it basically just outlined three major strategies, and underneath each one, three objectives that are in there. And it's a way to really help focus on what's important and to try and distill down into areas that have some impact. It's not all the way down into the metrics, and the outcomes, the SMART goals. That was the word I was trying to get to, but it is a way to help quickly frame that and to have a discussion around it. The second part that she shared with us, and this has been something that she shared earlier with us in the past, has been this work from, I think it's Patty Beach and the Art of Alignment, that looks at how to help organizations become more effective in becoming aligned and focused on what they're doing. And this process that is used has these 5 C's that are intended to be kind of the guide for the discussion. And that is that as we go through some proposal, in this case today, it's going to be this 3x3 matrix of strategies and objectives. The kind of the first stage of discussion is around clarifications. And then working on what you like about the idea, and then working on concerns, then working on changes, and then moving towards commitment. And that order, you know, really follows appreciative inquiry type of methodologies that help kind of get us onto a productive, positively motivated direction in that. So the encouragement here will be to use that process of clarification and then working through the, you know, what you like, what concerns you have, what changes need to be made as we discuss this. And the guiding process around this is being able to propose something, have this kind of discussion around these 5 C's, that is the probing, and then coming back to you with a re-proposal, and that's what Ryan was just referring to, that we take this and go back and do some more noodling on it, and then bringing it back with this close in terms of that commitment of what we're going to do with that. So any questions just on kind of this high level, what these tools are, how they're used, and any questions you have just about the general intent of this process and how you might use it yourself?
For what it's worth, I actually literally just got certified in the art of alignment.
Oh.
So I mean, I just got my magical badge like last week. So I can help Kitty with that process.
Oh, that's great. You've got your Art of Alignment badge, and Ryan's got his yellow dot. We are just rocking and
We are
rolling.
ready to go.
Yeah.
We're ready to go.
Sounds good. Okay. Well, let me stop this screen share. And I'm trying to remember, Ryan, was there a link to that 3x3 in the board packet? I don't think so. I might.
No, I think that was a late breaking edition.
Yeah, let me just copy the link and put it in the chat there. Oh, you just did there?
Yeah, let me get the full link for you though. That's only partial. So this will be.
No, there it is. Okay, yeah. Sounds good. Okay, so let me now move into what I've done that I want to share with you today. There it is. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. So here we go. Is that the right one? I guess that's the right one. There we go. So the process was, we got this template from Kitty. Ryan and I independently, without talking or cheating, filled out the 3x3s on our own, and then after we had independently filled them out, then I looked at both of them, my original and Ryan's original, and then I made some attempt to try and start merging them together. So what you're seeing here now for our discussion is an attempt to try and merge these together. And I'm going to leave it up right now in this presentation mode, but I'll probably switch over to a mode where I can actually edit this on the screen for you, because the intent is going to be to have a discussion about this using that 5C type of format. And really through the discussion today, work on changing this, refining it, clarifying it. And what we may end up with might be a refinement of this, could be quite different from this. But let me just take a second to kind of give you a high level view of what this proposal is for the beginning of our discussion. And, I kind of struggle a little bit. I want to continue trying to refine that short little statement about what we're doing, but the intent here is around guiding and accelerating Alaska's community and economic transformation. And I've broken it down with the input of Ryan into three main areas of focus. One being building our capacity and our capability to do work. That's kind of the backbone side of the organizational work that we're doing. And again, this is within kind of this 3-year horizon. The second is an area of focus and strategy around empowering Alaskans and communities to build their future. And then the third one is engaging Alaskans to create opportunity narratives. And those three to me kind of reflect, I think, the main lanes of work we need to do. The two lanes, and these are kind of massaged with the input of Ryan, so there's still some wordsmithing, I think, to try and do there, but let me hit each of the lanes now. The capability capacity to me really kind of ends up in three main areas. The team building that we need to do, and that's not only the internal team, like getting an ED on board and eventually being able to fund that position, and potentially other roles in communication and back end, but it's also the external team that needs to be there in terms of other organizations we're working with, partners that we need to have, as well as the board of directors. So that whole team building, I think, is an area of focus, and the goal being to develop that team. The second one is the communication capability and capacity. And that is not only communicating with the team, but also having the web presence, social media. And I was starting to fold in things like Startup Digest, potentially some of these ADN articles. And then also picking up on being able to tell this and share the stories of what's happening in the different aspects of our economy, the V1, V2, V3, and those stories. And then the third one, of course, being finance and operations and the fundraising, that stuff that Ryan's already jumped into full speed ahead. That second lane, empowering Alaskans and communities, has the area, and I've kind of merged a little bit here. This impact engagement and dialogues is the work that Ariel was working on with Beth for a while. And this is really about how do we create action around people getting together and working, and that includes the infrastructure bill work that we're doing with the Denali Commission, that's the IIJA. And then the agile economy initiatives. And that, in my mind, includes the training that goes with that. And that agile economic model initiatives around are that 4-quadrant approach of building open networks, opportunity narratives, quality places, and the talent that we need. And then the third portion is inspiring Alaskans. And that is, I think, a growing focus that keeps coming up lately in terms of doing some work in the area of workforce development, mentoring, and connecting in there. And then the third lane, engaging Alaskans, and to create these narratives. And to me, the these two lanes I'm still kind of struggling with are really similar, but they're quite different. This whole idea about creating these opportunity narratives is really about engaging Alaskans to see the world differently and to be able to engage together. And it's a little different in my mind than the middle one that's a little more focused in on actually creating action and work there. So this one's got more of the programming that we might do, as well as a learning platform, our events. It's got the challenge program and the innovation coalition. So I feel like that's not as clear as it was, or maybe was in my mind an hour ago when I was working on this, now that I kind of have to say it out loud. But I'm gonna put a cork into it for a moment and suggest we kind of dive into this thing in terms of your thoughts and comments, and let's see what we can make out of this in terms of trying to capture our major strategies and objectives that help us define where we're going with this work.
Well, I'd just like to say thanks for spending some time noodling on this thing and kind of like merging together the different, I think fairly closely aligned ideas for where to head, what direction to head into. And I've definitely, as I was kind of thinking through the 3x3 grid, I was struggling a little bit as well to figure out like where do you put some of the swim lanes for these things. I mean, they're really pretty closely aligned. And when I had been thinking about it, I was thinking about the four quadrants of the strategic doing grid that Ed has put together with brain power, quality spaces, entrepreneurship, and how that all feeds into the narrative. And what I had missed was the need for the team building and the organizational development, which I think is really core for what we're trying to make happen. That's going to be the engine that's going to drive us forward over the next several years. So, I'm really liking what we've got on the board and where we're going. I'd like to echo with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act funding that's coming out. That's really starting to open my eyes to some different needs that are out in the community, needs to coordinate different applications to find some support for actual grant writing and grant administration, and just sort of like the larger navigations that are going on there. So thanks, Kitty, for the nudge to stick with the C's. So I guess.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, so
I was just going to say the same thing, Kitty.
yeah, as a
Go ahead.
process, I think what we want to do is to allow the group as a whole to go through each of the C's before, like, rather than each person go through all 5 C's. Let's start with clarifying questions, and those are the hardest because we're tempted to always offer compliments and concerns in the form of clarification. But Tracy, since my hands are kind of full with the kiddos here, if you can help facilitate us through each C, that would be golden.
Yeah, and if you're with me, by the way, I'd love to see you juggling the grandchildren. My understanding is that commitment really doesn't come until we repropose. So we take the first 4, see where we end up, and then, the commitment comes later. So.
Exactly. Today we're working through the first 4. We could take a tentative read, but then Kai and Ryan follow up from today's meeting and really refine it with the ideas. So the quality of our collective knowledge comes through this probing discussion of the 4 C's. Oh, and Kai, I said hi briefly. I'm going back off mic. Hi, honey. You guys, the timer went off. Oh, sorry. I'll flip.
I love our life these days. It's so perverse. So I'm not sure. I mean, I'll try to both. I'm not sure how detailed notes you want me to capture in this conversation, because I think I could go insane.
Yeah, my own thought, Tracy, is not to worry about taking notes on this. I think for the most part, I'll try and, as we discussed it, I'll take some notes and feedback on this. I may edit some of this document that's on there live or put some comments in there, but I think for your minutes, I would just suggest that we presented a draft proposal and had a discussion on it, and then I'd rather encourage you to help facilitate our discussion than get mixed up in trying to capture a bunch of dialogue.
Great, thank you. Well, then if it's okay with you, I will jump in. And the really first part, if we're going to follow this model, is now is the time for people to ask clarifying questions without suggestion, without compliment, just really, what do you need to know from Ryan and Kai in this sort of initial first amalgam that will help us with the next steps? So any clarifying questions from anybody?
I have one. In the second line, you say empower Alaskans and communities. What other communities would we be empowering?
Well, I'd like to see us at some point. I think there's kind of like two things that I think of in that phrasing. One of them is the recognition that we're looking to have impact with individuals, but then more collectively with the communities that those individuals are a part of. And then taking it a step broader and maybe a little bit more ambitiously, I'd like to see us connected with the North in general. And so I could see us collaborating with Whitehorse at some point, with Calgary and the platform that they've developed. And then if we get real wild, then maybe we can even go beyond. But I think that's probably a little bit more centered around individual and then collective community impact first, and then potential extension beyond, just recognizing that there's a lot of alignment and similarities between the communities, like the broader northern nations.
Do you expect us to be able to do that by 2025 though?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say we're already doing it, but yeah, the clarification there is empowering individuals,
Yeah,
build their future, and empowering communities
the
of
greater
people
communities, yeah.
to build their future. And I'd started off in this, when I was mashing this up, it originally said just empower Alaskans to build their future. And I decided that I wanted to at least propose that this is also about how do we in community build the future, but I wanted to have both that individual and community focus. But
Yeah, no, I understand. Makes
Cool.
sense.
Right, thanks, Alice. Other questions of clarification?
Yeah, I would just ask, this can go to Kai or Ryan. There's a lot on this. Do you have a staged approach to this? Or is there a ranking? Like if I said, pick 3 of these, what are the top 3 in order of priority? What would they be?
yeah, there's I'm trying to see if I can bring it up quickly. In the presentation last week, I'm trying to bring it back. Oh, here it is. Are you seeing the balcony slide right now?
Yeah.
Oh, oops, I moved away from it. There is, in my mind, when I was looking at this, and there's, I think, going to be a step on terms of actually turning this into more of a work plan. But in my mind, the staging is this one that I presented last week, which is this year's really about creating capacity. That's kind of the backbone stuff, getting some of the initial organization things set up. I think the Denali Commission project is kind of a subset of the dialogue. And then next year, to me, is about scaling that engagement and really focusing on the outcomes. And then 2024 is how do we move into sustaining that impact and measuring the results. So that may not be a complete answer to what you're asking, but that's what was in my mind, is absolutely, we can't do all of this right now. And that this is kind of, in my mind, the 3 stages we're kind of going through in terms of creating an increased capacity to move from the beginning to the scaling to the sustainable impact.
Cool.
Kelly, did you have any follow-up?
No, that I think it's good for now. I'll keep with the process.
Great. Other questions of clarification, things that are unclear?
I have one question. One of the things that was in our discussions in the past, and I think those slides from last month, was the sort of social network visualization. And I wasn't sure if that fits, where it fits in here. So that's a clarifying question. Or if it's in here.
Well,
I mean, there's such a thing as too much, but is it here?
Yeah, thank you for bringing it up, because it is in here. And I'm trying to remember where I put it, because I absolutely wanted to not lose it. I'm trying to figure out if I lost it.
Yeah, it could be an
uh,
acronym I'm unfamiliar with.
Pasquale's work in that is important. And gosh, did I actually take it back out again? I need to add it back in there because
Well, so when we get to suggested changes, we can come back and
Yeah.
see where it fits. Thanks. That's all I had.
yeah, well, and just to clarify, it's implied, but I thought it was still in there in this section under team building and the partners, that there'd be the network mapping in there. And I'm trying to.
That's okay for now. That's fine.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I think Kitty, you've raised something that I think is important in process. Kai, I'm glad you're capturing some of these things, but be careful not to infer where changes are recommended. So
Right.
that's
And
I'm
my
not taking it as a change. I'm taking it as your clarification. Is it in here? Yes, it was. I thought it was actually written, and I'm trying to figure
Yeah.
out where it went.
that's okay. Just make a side note. I did put in the chat, go ahead and leave this as is throughout our discussion. Take some notes on the side because I'm just one voice. There's going to be, 6 others. So let it all just roll. Okay.
And I guess, for my part, while I don't see it explicitly in there, I see it implicitly in some of the program and the engaging Alaskans section. I think that having that network map is a pretty key feature that we can help facilitate. There's a lot of implied networks that are out there, but they're siloed. And if you don't know the magic handshake, then you don't know how to get into it. And so having an actual map would be really helpful. Same with the economic, having a more agile economy, being able to actually connect with and find the people that you need.
Ryan,
team building.
I'm going to respectfully tell you to because that's really moving into, future other stuff.
So to answer the question, now that I looked at it, I'm sorry I didn't have a quicker answer. Yes, the mapping is there. It was how I rephrased the agile economy initiatives and training, and the initiatives include the networks and the network building. That's where it's in there.
Great. Okay, thank you. We will get to those other pieces, Ryan, I promise. Any other clarifying questions? Remember, these help us figure out what to do with the next steps in the process.
Mita, you've got to have a thought on this, or at least a clarifying question. Maybe not.
I have a quick one.
Perhaps she's offer a couple. Go ahead.
It just took me forever to get off of mute. No, I don't. I'm just enjoying listening to everybody finding their groove in a new board. And I'm just thankful for all the people who are here. And, we've been engaging with this content for a few years now. And I even sat with Pascal and looked at his maps, so I don't have any major questions at this point. Thank you for calling on me though.
Well, thanks, Mita.
Thank you.
Atlas.
All right, Alice, thanks for waiting. Go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. What is in the second column, Inspire Alaskans? What is WFD?
Workforce development.
Okay.
So this, in my mind, is kind of the broad picture of the work that we could be involved in career awareness, career exploration, career development activities that would align people's capability to engage in these opportunities that we're helping them build and plan and become a part of.
Yeah, I just didn't know the acronym. That's all.
Yep.
And I would add an acronym question, and I apologize for missing some of these pieces. What is SUW and UAX? I mean, that must be the University of Alaska system, but under programs, what's SUW?
Startup Week.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Was there a second one, Tracy?
No, the other one I'm assuming is the University of Alaska system.
Yeah. Anytime I use the X, it's about just acknowledging that there are 3 separate MAUs, but
Yep.
it could be the system as a whole, or it could be a particular MAU
Gotcha.
activity. But I just made a note down here. I'll need to work on acronyms.
Mhm. Okay. Any
Right.
additional clarifying questions? And by the way, obviously, when we move on to the next stage, it doesn't mean that no other question can ever come up, but the key right now is anything left that's really important to understand.
I love how we have to clarify that we shouldn't give compliments because it makes me feel like I should insult you and then ask a question.
I don't believe that's the inverse of compliments, but I like the framework. I'd like a clarifying question, please, or I'd like one answered. Kai, you mentioned it briefly when you were showing us this, but can you kind of give me a 2 or 3 bullet point clarity between lane 3 and lane 4? You said you think they're different, but you think they're the same and they overlap, which is empower Alaskans and engage Alaskans. I'm still unclear.
So what's happening here is in the proposal. I'm sorry, I'm thinking for a second.
It's fine.
Let me come at this a slightly different way, and I may ask Ryan to help out with this. This is part of the mashup between what I drafted and what Ryan did. And Ryan's proposal, and I think rightly so, elevated the focus on opportunity narratives to a top level, whereas I had the narrative issue kind of buried down in the work there. And I really felt like at the end of the day that the most important thing we can do high level is to engage Alaskans in creating this new view of what's next Alaska. That narrative and that ability for people to see the narrative all by itself, whether they act on it, build something, do something, but just to simply see that narrative in their own lives and the organizations that they're doing in the communities is all by itself, I think, super important. And so Ryan's proposal back to me had this narrative thing at the very top, and I pulled it back out again from where I had it kind of buried in there. And so kind of maybe the bullet view is, I think that narrative thing needs to stand out as a kind of a North Star, as Ryan would say. We can't forget that what we're fundamentally doing is helping people build and create the new narratives of their future. And I think it's independent of that we also complement it, but it's different work of empowering Alaskans and communities to actually build that future and to work on that narrative. So it's, I think about creating that vision, that direction that is independent of doing the work on that's being separated here. And I'd love to, as we work on this more, figure out if that works or not. But the mashup here is the kind of the linear doing brain that I had, and I think Ryan came into it with more of the opportunity narrative mindset in that. And Ryan, you want to clarify that any more, or I don't want to belabor
And
it.
actually, before he does, I just want to acknowledge Atlas's text. Atlas, I'm going to have you hold, because really what we're doing is clarifying with the proposers at the moment, and any thoughts you have might help us with clarity and recommendations for changes later.
Ryan,
Pascal, can
you
you mute?
Yeah, you can manually mute people if you need to.
There you go.
But thank you, Casey. I figured. I just wanted to double check because I had done some of the work, not on this, of course, but with just kind of the communications and clarification of the ideas, I guess, which is why I mentioned it. But yeah, I hear you.
Thank you very much. And I know Ryan, Kai asked if you had anything to add.
I think he covered it. I mean, the high level summary for me is I just keep seeing over and over and over again the importance of culture and the importance of believing in an opportunity, and that if you aren't aware that something is possible, then it makes it impossible to actually to work towards it. And so, you know, whether that's believing in yourself to get a different job or to you know, change your mental health or combat addiction or whatever. And I see us as a state, you know, we're addicted to oil and we're trying to figure out how we're going to get off it and what we're going to do next. And so you have to believe that something is possible. And so that, to me, that really looks at shifting the narrative and building alignment among the different parties. And so that's why for me, it was kind of like a top level outcome. You know, I think if we accomplished one thing, which was to shift the narrative of what's possible for the state, then I think that would in itself would be really, really meaningful.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'm just doing, and I know I'm not facilitating this meeting, but just doing sort of a time check. We're at 5 minutes to the hour. We've got about 35 minutes left. Kai, I can move us forward into the next Cs or the next couple of Cs, but I'd like to know a kind of any time frame. I have a hard stop at 11:30, but I would like to know what else, how you'd like to frame this moving forward.
we can spend the rest of the meeting. This is the only thing that we have on the agenda at this point.
Okay. All right, terrific. All right, folks, before we move on to compliments, any remaining clarification questions that are burning at the moment or simmering or slightly warm? Okay, then let's open up the floor for compliments. What are things you see that you like, that make sense, that resonate, that you would just like to reflect on?
I like that the team building includes, our communities as well, like the communities will be involved with, because it's just telling that like we're trying to build communities and we're trying to help empower communities, but we're also actively building our own, and we're also, building those tangential, and they're part of our team, which, so I don't know, I like that.
Thanks, Atlas.
I'd
Direct,
second
Taylor?
and say just that I like the vision that this is laying out for kind of a cohesive program, if not an organization itself. It's pretty interesting to kind of just get a sense of where it's heading and what it could potentially be.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate the effort to try and bucket this into more digestible chunks, and to try and think about how to present this outward as well as give us something to frame our work inward.
Kitty, I really like that middle column. I hadn't anticipated it, but it's very action oriented, and it's about transferring the power, or igniting the power within Alaskans, not transferring, but it's not depending on AKV3 for so many of these results. It's about really lifting up all the possibilities in Alaskans through action. So I love the way that one is kind of clear. And for me, the separation from kind of programs we'd offer, those are some ways to do it. But I think there's some outcomes in that middle column that'll be very exciting to monitor and impact.
Thanks, Kitty. Mita, Andy?
I just want to note, that this is kind of a cool format. I like this proposal that Kitty had brought to Ryan and I to have a way to try and frame this. So it's kind of a cool tool. I'm going to be using it in other places.
Since you raised that, Kai, I actually have a tool question for Kitty. So it's not a compliment, so maybe you can wait till the concern. Okay. All right. Well, I think I will just kind of summarize. I think all of us are appreciative, Ryan and Kai, of your moving us forward into the next thing in the noodling mashup that you have created here that we continue forward with. The next one is concerns. And again, here we're really looking less for answers than just raising them out so that people can address them. So Kai and Ryan, you don't necessarily have to solve the concerns yourself. They become a group question for us to consider as we look at the changes. So I actually would like to start, Kitty, on the 3x3 framework. There seems like an awful lot in each of the sub boxes, and I'm just wondering, for me, it almost clouds things versus having impact engagement. And I was just wondering if that's a standard thing on this template. I don't have any problem with anything that's in the boxes, just kind of, again, clarity.
Well, it's a sneaky way of putting in some of the smart things that will be needed in the operating milestones. And it's a way also of offering a description to the bold title. So when this is kind of polished, you might have the bold title, 3-4 words, but you will have a corresponding work plan, operations plan. Different organizations use different terms that are very, quarter by quarter and delivery oriented. And I think, so it's okay for now because it contributes to the understanding, but a cleaned up version would be at a higher level. And actually, so this is just a way of synthesizing and bucketing, as you said. So it's okay, but yeah, we'll have to we'll have to be choosy. One of the things about 3x3 is it's important what's in it and what's not in it, because strategies are sometimes things you can't do. But that's all I think I would add.
Okay, great, thank you. Other concerns that come up for this format or about what's on the template itself?
Yeah, and it just from my standpoint, this could also include if any of you see things that are missing, as well as what's here.
Absolutely.
I think under the narrative part that there needs to be a media campaign, because that in itself, as we all know, has its own logistics. So there's getting information out in print and social media and other platforms, traditional media platforms, which Atlas is amazing at. But I think that should be listed in there because it does require a lot of skill and funding.
Thank you. And that probably, I would just encourage that. That was kind of and thank you for bringing that up. It's kind of halfway between a concern and a change. So let's, we want to identify what we might need to add. I think we've added a change in with this one, and that's all right. We don't have to be so rigid. But thank you.
And just for, I'm not sure whether it's clarification of that question or whatnot, but I've got the note in there, but in my mind, that's part of what that whole communication block is over in the first lane, was the media effort behind the website, the social media, the different activities. But I've got the comment over there in the narratives also, but I just observing that it's kind of there, but I'll need to work on maybe restructuring it. Thanks for the thought around the opportunity narrative focus though.
I want to come back to a clarifying question just really quick, because it ties into my concern. Is this document going to be, of course, polished eventually, but used only internally, or are we going to be presenting this to a bunch of people? Like, how do we see this document being used?
I'll offer kind of the background question, which is whatever you want, but often I see clients use this for the working process of developing focus and presenting it along with mission, vision, values, and sort of tangible metrics in some other synthesized way. So that it could be either, but it's usually a working tool.
Okay, I thought so, but yeah, that makes sense too, to use it multiple ways. So then my concern related to that is I'm worried that other people may not know what like agile is, or what like impact engagement means, or like even like what we mean when we say innovation coalition, or like what we mean when we say innovation, because that's obviously a whole thing that Alaska struggles with, is innovation in general. So my concerns are, I guess, more of the jargony words, if people may not understand them, if they're not in economic development circles.
Yeah, I guess, is this an appropriate time to offer a clarification?
Well, I think the question becomes, do we want to bring up the clarifications in change?
Yeah.
If it's an answer to the question, Ryan, I think that would be okay. But if it's an actual change based on the concern, then I would just say it can wait. But again, we don't have to be so rigid that we can't do things. So
Sure.
What do you think is the best spot?
Well, I think that it's a combination, but I think probably change is where that will make the most sense. I think this is just sort of a +1 to the need of communication and education. And so to directly clarify, I see this tool as being something that is used internally, but is also shared with the larger community. And then where the change part comes in is I think that sharing then comes into the creation of educational material to help elevate and raise awareness within the larger community. Because going back to Kai's three-part perspective of the activities that we're doing, everything that we should be doing should be bringing value to the individual, bringing value to an organization that they're directly engaging with, and then bringing value to the larger community. Did I get that right for the 3 layers of stratification there, Kai? Okay.
All right, thank you. Other concerns people need to raise?
I have 2, and they're kind of very broad, and I can summarize them quickly. The first is I think there's too much on this. I think it's biting off way too much to try to actually be accomplishable. And I'd like to see it focused a little bit more on kind of the second part of my critique or my concern is that I don't think it's specific enough. And if you were to ask me to kind of come up right now with objectives and key results, I couldn't do it from this, right? I would like to see a little bit more meat around specific, what are we trying to achieve, so that we can then get to a discussion around, okay, what does that look like in terms of actionable? Is it a conference? Is it a workshop? Is it, we want to buy a building, we want to refurbish it? I'd like to see it motivated more around that, because at the moment, this is all very good stuff at a very high level, but it's not yet there to the point where I think we can take it to the next level.
Thank you, Taylor. I actually would echo that concern. So thank you.
Man, you guys are gonna make me narrow in and get really specific. You're gonna hold me accountable, aren't you? Not gonna let me work on all the things. You don't believe there's enough coffee in the world?
I'm gonna do something that someone on our board kind of did to us, which is pick one thing, Ryan, and let's start with that.
Well, maybe can we stick with threes? I really like the spirit of threes.
As a very old fisherman said to me, you get three when you showed me you can do one.
I like that a lot.
I really, both appreciate the conversation and share the concern, so it's helpful to think about it.
Yeah.
All right, other concerns that people need to raise? The only other, I would raise another concern. I think, absolute clarity and nothing, I'm concerned about the pieces that are aspirational, and I want to be really clear on that. There is nothing wrong with aspiring. I think we need to continue to have aspiration and, big, hairy goals. But I think on something like this, if it's aspirational, it needs to either be, and I think I'm building on what Taylor said, it either has to be measurable or it comes off, and we will continue to aspire. We don't lose that. That's vision, that's passion, that's drive. But my concern is anything that is aspirational shouldn't be on here. It clouds.
I'll echo the point you made on if it can't be measured, then it shouldn't be on here.
I'll push back on that slightly and just say that, some things are intangible and can't be measured, but that doesn't mean that they aren't meaningful. And so I think that there's a fine balancing act there, but I also recognize that being able to measure it goes a long way towards being able to actually pay attention to it and then make sure that you're working to accomplish it. And so I would ask Tracy, would you be comfortable saying, like, here's a couple of the things that I think are very aspirational? Can you help pull me out of the 30,000 foot level and get me back to 100 feet?
The short answer is absolutely. I'd be happy to, Ryan, but we might want to see where the change recommendations come up. And then if it comes down to kind of doing another iteration, happy to sit down with a cup of coffee and a computer and try to pull some of that out. I will, just to kind of add on to what you were saying, absolutely things are meaningful without a question. And there needs to be aspirations, and there needs to be vision and drive to the things that are hard to articulate and hard to measure. I'm not suggesting those be gone, but this sort of 3x3 really is intended as, for lack of a better term, a work plan. And that's really fundamental. And so, as you're trying to communicate it, it's a work document inside, and it's a potential communication document external. The clearer and cleaner it is, the more people will understand what we're doing. And when it comes to talking to funders and anything else, the aspiration is your tagline. The aspiration is the images that stand behind the things that you're saying.
Yeah,
I would second that as well. One thing I would add is just another concern is I don't see anything in here about engagement with other entities that are already doing existing work or have been doing it for a long time, and then also deconfliction of these goals with that work as well. Because I do think there are quite a few folks who, if they looked at this, they'd say, okay, this looks a little bit like what a lot of other folks are doing and have bits and pieces of. So how does it deconflict with that? So I want to make sure we have that reflected in this.
I like the deconfliction part, so I want to echo that. I want to loop back around to what we were talking about right before this too, Ryan, to your pieces. I didn't necessarily mean measured by revenue or people. there's other measurements.
Yeah, thank you.
And
I
then
think,
Mita mentioned
go ahead.
something in the chat. She said this isn't Smarty goals, this is org culture. Mita, if you want to mention, like, talk, feel free, but I wanted to clarify for everyone that this isn't org culture, right? This is the work, like a work plan, or is that the same, or what?
I was just kind of defining, like, so I hear that we need to define goals and the 1, 2, and 5-year plan and a lot of things. I am wanting to drill into the defining items. I think that this is a document, shouldn't be thrown out, like the content that's in here, but maybe put to the side. And then as people are talking, like pulling out the definable the goals that are achievable and creating the Smarty goals. But I really see this as kind of creating our identity. That's what I see in this document. This is our identity as a group and kind of our defined vision, like visionary aspirations. And so I think that this is actually really great at clarifying that we all have similar buy-in in what we're doing. But I don't see this as the Smarty goals. But it's something that shouldn't be thrown out.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you.
Anita.
I'd echo that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
As I've talked with Pasquale and some different folks about this group and what we're trying to do, I've often come back to the idea of of a body and how we I kind of picture the presentation and the mission, vision, values, the stuff that Beth and Ariel have come up with is really helping us to get the bones in place as an organization. And so Mita's comments are making me think of this as a little bit like the muscles for the ways that we're going to actually start moving stuff around a little bit. But there is more layer for, like, then what are we actually accomplishing, or what are we using our muscles towards? And we need to be able to measure those things and figure out if we're, touching the right spots, doing the right things.
I like what you said, Mita, about not having this thrown out, even if, we don't end up using some of the content. I definitely agree to that. I think my concern now then with that kind of clarification is that we may need to pull this apart into kind of 2 directions, which is one that's action oriented and one that's more vision oriented.
Yeah, and I think what I'd like to do, both as a process check on the 4C model, but also clarifying for me, I wasn't suggesting that everything get thrown out or undone.
Yeah.
There are a few things in here that are really much more aspirational, and they do drive culture. I actually think a lot of the culture for AKV3 is going to be driven in the first column. And in some ways it's the muscle, and the next 2 are the internal organs or the brain or the whatever it is you want to do, the other 2 columns. So I do think they need to be there. I understand the 3x3 really as, it was supposed to be strategies and tactics. That's how the 3x3 grid was presented by Kai in the beginning, and what I understand it from Kitty. So in that way, it does start driving our culture. It does start creating a clarity on who we are, but it still needs to be something that, whether it's 2 layers, however it is we want to do it, it's ours to make happen. So what I'd like to do is comment that it is now 11:14. I know that Ryan or Kai, at some time at the end of this meeting, you need to identify when our next one is going to be. I would propose, Kai, Ryan, that we have an initial discussion on changes, but recognize that we probably won't be done with all of it in the next 12 minutes or so. I don't want to compress something that is probably deserving of more conversation.
That's fine. And at this point, our next meeting is tentatively scheduled on the 24th. It would be the 4th Friday. I think we can follow up asynchronously offline to confirm that that'll work with most of the folks.
Okay. All right. Well, then with permission.
This is Kitty here. I'm going to attempt to chime in on kind of process and next steps. Yeah, well, I've got both kids in the house right now. We'll see. As this is really intended to be sort of what are the strategic areas, those 3-column headers.
She either lost her voice or dropped a baby. Kitty, are you still there? Okay, I think we're going to assume that Kitty will come back when she gets whatever technology fixed.
Yeah.
So I think, as she said, it's, you know, it's intended for strategies and lower level, you know, steps. Maybe a question we need to ask. I don't want to lose momentum with the ideas of changes. But I also think we might need to come back to it. Do people wish to take a few moments to at least start suggesting some changes? Or do you want to stop and come back on the 24th?
I'd love to get any high level changes that are top of mind changes that are coming out of this discussion we've had so far while it's fresh.
Yeah, I think the one that I kind of melded last time was the concern that we may need to separate the two. So that's a suggested change. Separate from like two documents of action or strategy and vision.
It's Kitty, I'm back. And some of what I hear Atlas saying is where I was trying to get to before I lost the connection. We want to refine the framework here and then get to sort of tactics and truly specifics in another parallel working plan. And I think that has to be done kind of in concert. You can't just try to get this perfect if you don't have the specifics fleshed out. The kind of real value of the 3x3 is honing in your framework and the broad objective and strategy directions. So I will stay offline now because it's getting out of control.
I guess to that point, I think the question that would be really helpful to me is, and I assume Ryan, is if this is kind of the framework by which we will then hang more of the later detail and SMART goals, are there changes to the framework here that you see, the lanes, the basic buckets that are under each lane, that would be helpful changes?
So in the second and third columns, starting with the first, the empower and engage boxes, I would like to see the content that comes after the preposition to in both of those to be a little bit more specific. So build their future and create opportunity narratives. To me, those are too vague. I don't understand fully what they mean. I think if you showed this to folks who aren't engaged with this process, they wouldn't know what we're talking about there either. I'd like to see that be really something we could take and then say, okay, what exactly is going to support that? To me, that's what then drives the content underneath those boxes to some degree. And I think, you know, empower, engage, those are perfectly fine verbs as is. But I'd like to see a little bit more specificity about why, kind of the so what, you know, to be that kind of debate kid asshole on the call. You know, empower Alaskans. Okay, so what? Engage Alaskans. Okay, so what? You know, why are you doing it? To me, that's where you need to go. So maybe that could be, that's a content, but I think it's content that drives to some degree the framework here.
And I would add, if I could, Taylor, on top of that, that the chain, that it still has to be really short and tight. But I agree with you. The clarity would help what comes underneath it. Because I think, you know, I look at it and I still kind of go, I'm still a little confused, even though it's been explained a couple times.
Yeah, I mean, I think like just to throw out a random idea, like you could say empower an Alaskans community to start new businesses, right? And then that's something that you can then actually measure and say, okay, are the things we're doing under this actually starting new businesses? You know, engage Alaskans to create opportunity narratives. It could be something like, right now we're not talking about X, Y, and Z. We want to engage Alaskans to begin talking about X, Y, and Z. And you can measure like how many conversations have we overheard or how many conferences have we had held on X, Y, or Z topic.
Yeah, so maybe the, you know, throwing out an idea here, maybe the first column is really about our organizational capacity to be able to, you know, build up who we are, what we're trying to do. The middle column is trying to do like education and engagement externally. And so like, how many people are we helping to support, to start a business, to take on a civil initiative, to do whatever it is that they want to do. And then the third column is, you know, thinking about education and entrepreneurship for that middle one. And then that third one is looking a little bit more about the narrative and just communication, and potentially education is drifting into that one as well. Just trying to share concepts, share ideas, build resonance.
Yeah, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say that that reminded me of what I was going to say earlier when we were clarifying the difference between the second and third columns. The way that I saw it and the way that I see it is the middle column is what Ryan just said, like external doing. And then the way that I saw the third column was more of building the internal community. So the fans of Alaska version 3, the people who want to support the brand, not necessarily want to be in the organization, but they, you know, it's like the difference between working for a company and loving a company.
And I was just going to jump in real quick with a potential change. I would actually move the first column, which is all about kind of internal capacity building, to the third position, because I think of kind of, if I were looking at this right to left or left to right, I think you want to start with, okay, what are you doing? And I think maybe a 3-column division could be, here's what we do as a program. Here's what we do with others. And that's kind of your second. So it's the broader engagement. And then third, and then this is how we build the capacity to do the things in column 1 and 2. But I think if you start with like, we're building a program, to me, it immediately my mind is like, okay, well, what are we building it for? Like, why do we need team members? Why do we need communication with others? Like, I'd rather have kind of the classical, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? How are you going to do it? That framework to me makes a little bit more sense than, so like reverse these to some degree.
Yeah, thanks.
I did just jump in. Sorry, I had my hand up, so I'm just gonna barge in now.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. So with this, I love all of this, but there's some of that nuts and bolts that are being talked about right now. I'd like to see some just really concrete, us get really concrete in our capacity department in defining what creates sustainable economy and what things do we actually want to address. Because what I would like to navigate away from or not get into is that we just pontificate. Like all we do is talk about great stuff, which the inspiration is part of it, but really defining like what areas and sectors are necessary for a stable economy and what are we missing. And maybe that's in some of the Denali Commission work or some of the other work, but really looking at that research of what do we have and where do we need to build, which we all know, but it would be great if we had it on paper with some numbers. And then how are we supporting those industries?
I would second that. I think that's a really big, important part of this. Maybe this is something I should have raised it as a criticism or concern. We don't have research and analysis anywhere in this, and to some degree, Mita, I think that's where you could kind of sitting down and thinking about, okay, what do we know about the Alaska economy? Who can we go talk to better understand it? And then how do we really start having conversations around the structure of what sustainability actually is? To me, that really requires kind of an R&A component that I don't see necessarily reflected here.
Yeah,
Just
that's great.
I just wanted to echo that Kitty echoed in the comments. That's all.
Yeah, and here's another echo. I mean, I really like what you're saying about like discover what works and what's hidden here. But is that the dialogues are intended to be surface what works and amplify it through connections. But that's in sounds it is a little R&D, but it's not also going beyond Alaska and finding out really exceptionally innovative practices and activities. So I love what you just said there, Taylor.
And then Mita, you still have your hand up. So having missed it the last time, I want to make sure I don't miss it again. Do you have anything else to add?
No, just that research and kind of academia component.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that for me, you know, as we're having this conversation and realizing like I'm going to have to dial things into, you know, one specific area so I can earn my 3, you know, what is the filtering criteria that we're going to use? How are we going to decide what opportunities we're picking up or not? Because there's going to be so much that's happening, and that, you know, rightly so, it needs to happen. But I think that we should work to get very clear on prioritizing what we engage with or what we do not.
I think that's the real rub here of strategy. So while we have a framework and 1,000 ideas, sorry, Tracy, didn't mean to stomp on this. It is in the choosing, and we have things like mission, vision, values, plus there's the 2x2 matrix that, you know, strategic doing offers around, you know, what's doable and most impactful, you know. So I think it was called the Big Easy in Ed's old work. We have a few tools at our disposal. But that's why this is the beginning of the strategy conversation, because, okay, this puts things in categories. And we also need to think about the fact that, like, these are 3-year phrases, but what's a 1-year target? So anyway, I think that's really where it gets quite challenging. How much of what are we going to do? And then to strategic doing, it's agile. So we do reflect reality from a quarter to quarter basis as we work through the plan.
And then I would just add, Andy had a comment that is, I think, related to this. I feel like we're building a bridge, hoping that the cities will be built on either side rather than understanding where the bridge needs to be built. And I think this is what we're discussing at the moment. So I'm going to do a time process check and turn it back over to Kai. We've got about 4 minutes left. I do not really believe we're done with this conversation, but I think we've surfaced a number of good suggestions. And I would just want to loop back, when you bring a proposal into this process, it's really important to kind of come back to the proposers and say, thank you. You know, you're giving us a framework to discuss, a framework to bring up changes, a framework to now collectively look at what, you know, we need to do to re-propose, which is not stepping away from everything, but building upon and refining. So, you know, on behalf of all of us, Kai and Ryan, thanks for getting us a framework to, you know, look at and reconsider and refine, because it will help us in the work that we're doing.
Thanks for the feedback on all that. I would just circle back, you know, wrapping up on this, the underlying genesis of this work a year and a half ago was this significant transition that's needs and is happening in the state. And I'm just reflecting as I, you know, look at all the comments that we've captured here, that Alaska's changing as we work on this. And it makes this a great example of kind of the wicked nature of helping, you know, create Alaska's future. Is that these things we're writing down have to me changed dramatically, you know, in the last year and just in the last couple of weeks. So it's a fascinating process to figure out how we work on this, and on one hand dial down something that's specific in a 3-year plan, and yet recognize that I'm not sure we can predict what things are going to look like in 6 months.
I do want to apologize. I have a hard stop at 11:30. So
We're good. Okay, thanks for helping guide the discussion. We'll follow up, Ryan, if you can, just to confirm June 24th as our next meeting to work on that. There may be some other stuff and opportunities for feedback in the meantime, but thank you so much for all the feedback that we've gotten today.
Yeah, thank you. My hope, Tracy, once things settle down for you, that we can get some minutes and get those out to folks, and at the same time confirm that time is going to work.
Ryan, the minutes are on the Google Docs. I created them. They are there. The biggest thing that we won't have is they won't be approved. So I don't know what sequence you want to do, but what I've captured today should be in the Google document folder for your distribution pleasure.
Excellent. Thank you. I'll share them out as draft minutes, and we can review them for the next at the next meeting.
Cool. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you for the feedback. I really appreciate it and value what you all have added into this process. And I just want to say it's not possible without your involvement. Like, you guys are the reason why this organization exists, why we're able to put in the proposals that we are, why we have this framework. So thank you. I really, really appreciate it.
And it's cheese.
See ya.